Well, it's great to come to you from another spot around our church. It's kind of a cloudy night, evening when we're recording this, and we made a decision that if it starts to pour rain like it has been lately, that we'll press pause and we'll pick it up where I left off, because it's just how it's going to be. But the things I've been trying to show you over the past weeks are things that people notice when they drive past 300 Winterberry, and the things that we notice when we look out from the parking lot here. It's our mission field, and so I really want us to be thinking about that as we lead up to the days and through the days of us coming back into this place, and really thinking about what is the purpose of us coming back, and what are we coming back for and with. What are the new attitudes that perhaps we have to consider? And the big thing for us to consider, and I want you to take this with all seriousness, is that the worldwide pandemic has changed the world. I also believe that it's changed the way, at least given us a new perspective on what the church's mandate is to the community. And if we miss that point, I really think we've missed the mark. The world needs the church, as they always have, but let's be very careful to understand that the church has to respond to the community in a way that they will hear, a way that they will respond to. And that's not new. That's Jesus. That's exactly how he responded to the community in his day. I was thinking today about a time a number of years ago when I pulled out of the parking lot at the downtown Barton Street jail. I was getting to my car and going into that place. We'll talk about that again sometime, but going into that place, I found that it took a whole lot of prayer to get in there. As soon as you step in the door, you know you're in a dark place. You're in a place where there's not a lot of hope for many, many people. I came out of that place that day and I noticed, and because you can't take anything electronic in there as the chaplain, I had to leave my phone, my BlackBerry at the time. Do you remember Blackberries? What a wonderful device they were. Well, we thought they were. I had to leave it on the seat of the car, or at least under the seat of the car. In that neighborhood, it's you don't leave anything in sight, because there's lots of things that happen in that neighborhood. It's a tough neighborhood. I got to my car, I noticed a message, I listened to the message. It was a colleague of mine who was having trouble with an assignment. We were all in a chaplaincy course at that time, and so I pulled out of the parking lot, dialed up the phone, and was talking on the phone as I went up Barton Street towards the York Boulevard. Just about the end of Barton Street, where it kind of comes to an end and curves back out to York Boulevard, I went through an intersection and stopped, still talking on the phone. Just about not 100 yards up the street, the red and blue lights come on in behind me, and it's the police. They're pulling me over, and of course I knew what that was about. I was on my phone. Now, I don't want to talk about the fine. It was nothing like they are now. I noticed a sign out on the QEW the other day that says if you're talking on your phone, that's going to cost you, if you're talking on your handheld device, that's going to cost you $3,000 and 6 points. But the reason for that is distraction. The thing that the law is trying to resolve is distracted driving, which is a real problem. You've come across upon those wrecks where someone has slammed into the back of someone else, and it doesn't seem like there's any strange cause for it. There's nothing that's run in front of them, but oftentimes that's distracted driving. It's a big problem. But you've seen it also, right? You've seen distracted walking. It's interesting, these devices that we have in our possession now, we can distract ourselves in all kinds of ways, right? We're constantly looking at our devices. And I've seen distracted walkers. I've seen distracted walkers walk right off the curb, not paying attention to the signs, and they walk off the curb and they're right in front of you. You really got to be careful when you see somebody walking and looking at their phone. What about waiting? Isn't that device that you carry in your pocket such a handy little thing when you've got to wait, right? If you've got to wait in line, it's kind of comical to see, people in line and like this. I feel that there's going to be a lot of people with really big problems in the back of their neck because they spend so much of their life, staring down at their phone. Distractions in life are a problem, no question. I've just encountered another one just recently in the last month. I'm having to find myself study time when I can shut all the distractions off and dig into God's Word in a way that probably I wouldn't have done when I wasn't preaching each week. A little different to read casually than to study for a sermon, and I've found that I have to shut off those distractions to make sure that I'm not distracted by other things. I've learned once again that it's a little tough to study for a sermon here at the office. There's too many things going on, even in COVID, even when there's not anything supposedly going on. There's all kinds of things going on and people coming in, and that's good, that's great, we want that, but maybe not the best place to study. So I've had to find myself a quiet spot. And this is kind of a quiet spot back here and behind the church on the parking lot side. Beautiful little spot that's been created. Peter, as we read just a few moments ago in chapter 1, we're looking at verses 13 to 16 today. I believe he had distractions in mind when he starts this passage off by saying, "Therefore, gird up the loins of your mind." Don't you love the King James Version? Maybe you don't, but I sure love it for the word pictures that he gives. If you were living in Peter's day or before that, you saw those words or heard those words. Those words were words that were used to say, prepare for battle. Gird up the loins of your garments. The idea was, they wore those long flowing garments, and it was impossible to run or impossible to do sports or impossible to do battle. Anything that would require you to move quickly, those garments would have just got caught up and tripped you. So he says, gird up the loins, but he says, gird up the loins of your mind. I've been trying to give these sermons 2-word titles and attach them to you, and if we had a title for this one, and you'll know that titles aren't my strong suit when it comes to sermons. I don't know that I always have the time to focus on a snappy title, but if I had a 2-word title for this today, it would be your mind. We've been talking about your hope and your faith and your identity, and today I want us to focus on your mind. Now, this is not going to be a psychological analysis in any way, but it is going to, I do want us to think about what does he mean, and how does that play out when he says, gird up the loins of your mind. I think what he's trying to tell us is prepare your mind for battle. Later on in 1 Peter, we would read, and we might get there, we might not. I kind of feel like we might pull this last bit out. But later on in 1 Peter, he uses these words. He says, the devil walks around like a roaring lion, seeking whom he may devour. And any studies on how Satan gets involved in your life, as Jesus has put him in his place, you would know that although he has a voice, he really doesn't have the teeth of a lion, meaning that he could speak into your life things that could cause you to be distracted and sidetracked. But the teeth, well, he doesn't really have the teeth. So what I want us to think about initially then is, what are the things that distract us in the church? Now, if you were standing here with me, there's all kinds of distractions going on. There's cars driving by, there's somebody talking over there. In fact, Sue's having a conversation with somebody that just came into the parking lot and is interested in what's going on. But lots and lots of distractions. But I wanted to focus on some, and I came up with a few that are particularly impact the church, and in particular impacting your Christian mind. Let me go down the list really quickly. It's not really the heart of what we want to do, but I really do want to sit here for a moment, and I want us to come back to it at the end to think about what you're going to do about this, because it's important that you take a look at these and find a way to, like I've had to find a way to eliminate them or turn them off, to find a place somewhere in your life that you can eliminate these distractions. Here's the first one: worry. Things that you can allow into your life, and then allow your mind to turn them over and over and over and over. Worry. Things that you perhaps have no control over, but you allow your mind to continually ruminate on them and turn them over and over and become anxious about them. Worry can be a huge distraction to your spiritual life, and you would combat that with prayer, with dialogue with your Christian brothers and sisters. Fear. Fear is a big one. Fear is something that sits down deep inside of us. Fear is something that can raise up its ugly head, if you want to speak of it that way, when we least expect it. Now you might want to say, well, I'm afraid of nothing. I'm rough, tough, and hard to bluff. But the fears that I'm talking about are the things that, again, the voice of the evil one in that back of your mind can bring to your remembrance. Things perhaps that God has long forgiven, cast into his sea of forgetfulness, but are lying there dormant. And the evil one has a way of bringing those to the forefront and causing us to be fearful about them. Things that we could have and probably have resolved. How about jealousy? The third one, jealousy. Ugly, isn't it? Things that we think about others that cause us to have a certain attitude about them, or things that they've done, or things that they have, or those sort of things. Things that are spoken of in the commandments of Moses. Thou shalt not covet. Jealousy. Things like that can get in the way of our spiritual walk, get in the way of our spiritual progress. Hate. Very close friend of mine who is now in heaven, much respected, spoke of a story of a person that he knew who had hate tattooed on his fists, on the 4 fingers, 4 knuckles, H-A-T-E. Hate is something that doesn't just come quickly. It's developed over time. The result of not dealing with things, and not dealing with relationships, and not dealing with circumstances that cause us to become bitter. Hate can be a distractive element in your spiritual walk. Very close cousin to hate would be unforgiveness. That place where we've decided we're just not going to process what's happened. We're just going to hold on to it forever, or for a long time. Unforgiveness. Impurity is one that came to mind. Impurity, let's call it what it is. It's sin. Things in our lives that should not be there, that shouldn't have a home there, but we've allowed to take up residence there, and we're living with them, and we're carrying those things. Those things can be distracting to our spiritual walk. A couple more that maybe you've thought about even more. I listed weariness. The sense that we've just been doing things, and very good things, spiritual things, Christian things, church things, over and over and over for so long. And we've become weary, just weary. The Bible talks about being weary and well-doing. It can happen, can't it? And it becomes a distraction to our spiritual walk, because we get the sense of just feeling beat up, avoiding things, to the place where we don't want anybody to ask us to do things because we're just weary, we're tired out. Got to deal with that. Overload, again, a close cousin to weariness. That place where you've just got so many things piled up on your life, you can't hardly see your way around them. Peter says, gird up the loins of your mind, and I hope I haven't overwhelmed you with the list, but those things in our lives that just weigh us down and cause us to just be overwhelmed. He says, gird up the loins of your mind because there's a battle. And life is a battle, isn't it? There are things in your life and in my life and just living in this world that I would identify as battle. They're a battle. He goes on and says, be sober. If we were to look at lists, and I no place for that in today's talk today, but go back to Galatians chapter 5, the fruit of the Spirit at the end of the 5th chapter of Galatians. But before that, there's that list of vices, that list of things that find their way into our lives or back into our lives, or we used to be that way. But he contrasts that. Prepare for battle, be sober. A great translation of that word is be self-controlled. And as you'll remember, self-controlled is one of the fruit, one part of the fruit of the Spirit. He goes on and says, prepared for battle with your minds girded up, rest your hope fully on the grace that is to be brought to you at the revelation of Jesus Christ. Now, I know we've been talking about hope, and I know that, and on purpose, I've been trying to open up hope, and what does it look like, and how do we identify it, how do we recognize it? But he says here, he gives us another picture of what hope needs to look like. He says, rest your hope fully. And when you think of the word rest, you think about something that's sitting on something else. If I had a chair here, I would sit down. Sue said perhaps I could sit on that rock and do the talk, and it just didn't work. But anyway, to rest on something is to sit it down. This building behind me rests not on the dirt, but on foundation, on footings. You don't build a building like this without digging down deep and pouring concrete footings, many of them. And that's what you sit the building on. Peter's saying that you need to sit your faith on what is absolutely solid. He says, rest it. Make its foundation the grace that is to be brought to you when Jesus Christ is revealed. Now let's think about that thought, just that word, that phrase, just for a second. Here's how I'd best describe it. When he says that grace is to be brought, if you look in the original language, we're talking about something that's already in motion, something that's already happening, and you're receiving the benefits of it now. Now think about that word for a moment, that line. So your hope isn't in something that is somewhere out there in the fog, in the clouds. Your hope is in what Jesus is already doing in your life. You're already the benefactor of that, which will come to its completion when he returns. But you're already there. You're already there. Here's how I want you to describe it to you. 2 things. Joy Barrett's roast beef dinner. That's right. I don't know if you know Joy Barrett. She's an amazing lady. She lives in St. Thomas. I hope that maybe she can see this, because I want her to know I made mention of her, and I'm going to make mention of one other person. But Joy Barrett's roast beef dinner, it's got all the trimmings. It's got, the mashed potatoes, the gravy, and yes, indeed, the Yorkshire puddings. And when you dive into that dinner, you know you've sat down to roast beef dinner at Joy Barrett's house. But you know what else you know? Dessert's coming. Dessert is coming. You know. You don't have to even think about it. You can trust in the fact it's already on its way. Second person, Sue Donus's pasta dinner. Now she does it right. She uses the Cappelletti pasta. It's that really thin stuff. It's so good. And just about the time you finish taking your last bite and you think you can't stuff any more into yourself, you smell it. That's right. Apple crisp. It's in the oven. You knew it. It's coming. That's the picture that he's trying to get across to us when he talks about the grace that is being brought to you. It's already on its way. You're already taking part in what God has to do in your life and what he wants to do in your life. I had a talk with somebody this week because Peter said, rest your hope on what you know is already on its way. You're already a partaker of it. I had a talk with somebody this week about hope. And I want to tell you, thank you. I'm pretty sure you'll be watching this morning. I want to thank you for that conversation. It reminded me that hope looks forward. Hope doesn't look backwards. Hope's not looking back over your shoulder. Hope looks forward. Oh, sure, we've done some amazing things, haven't we, in our Christian life? We've done some amazing things, but hope in Christ looks forward. It's forward looking. It looks to where God is. God was there with us in those moments, with us in those accomplishments, with us in the places where we did those great things for him, whether it was personally or in this church or in your church, wherever that might be. But hope looks forward. What we see in the rearview mirror is very important. It's experience. But hope looks forward. Hope looks on to what God is doing, and we seek to join him there. The work that he's begun, the Bible says, in you, he'll work through to completion. Peter speaks of this hope that is already ours, and then he says, here's what I want you to do with it. And we're going to speak of these things rather quickly. He says, as obedient children. Contrast that with disobedience always. When you see obedient children, you want to think, well, what does disobedience look like? And in some ways, it's that list that we looked at, the distractions. As obedient children, not conforming yourselves to the former lust, as in your ignorance, verse 14 says. So the thought we need to capture there is that you have been changed. You have been changed. Radically changed. Amazingly changed. The Bible speaks of your life never being the same. The old has passed away, is dead. The new has risen to life. A resurrection story. That's you. But you know what? We have to live like we've been changed. There's a song that I'm not sure if we're going to be able to hear it today, but it says, shake, shake like you've been changed. Now, it's like shake off the old stuff because it's no longer part of you. And for us to live like we haven't been changed, for us to live in the way that we used to be, or for us to live in that despondent, distracted way of life, nothing much godly about that. Nothing much hopeful about that. So as you prepare your mind for the battle that is ahead of us, as you prepare your mind so that you can see where God is working and the hope that he's laid before you, remember, you have been radically changed. You are nothing like you were before you met Jesus. The radical change in you requires some action, according to 1 Peter chapter 1, verse 15. You're obedient children. You're not conforming yourself to the former way of doing things, but as he who has called you, as he who called you is holy, you also be holy in all of your conduct. You see, you've been changed, so your conduct has changed. The way that you live. The old versions talked about your conversation. Your life is different. Don't you wish he'd said just be nice, though? Don't you say that, he who has called you is nice? So you be nice too. I titled this little section, Why Nice Isn't Good Enough. It's a good question, isn't it? Why couldn't we be nice? We have lots of people around us that are nice. My neighbors are nice. People some of them across the street are nice. Some of them don't want to talk to me. They look at their shoes when I walk out the door. They don't want to look at me. But some of them are nice, and some of them have conversations with us. But why couldn't we just be nice? Isn't that good enough? You see, God's call to you, God's call upon your life is beyond nice. Look at what he says. He says, be holy. God's call to you is to holiness. You see, it's holiness that'll change a community. It's holiness that'll change your family. It's holiness that will adjust the trajectory of your life to go in a different direction. I know what you might be thinking. Well, what about those holier than thou people? I don't think that's in the Bible, but holier than thou. You've met them. I know you have. People who think that they're just so good they really can't talk to you. Just so good that they really can't descend down to your level. No, I don't think that's at all what Peter's getting at. See, holiness is not about you, it's about God's presence in you. I wrote this down. Nice people are warm, but holy people are on fire. Warm things will perhaps make some difference, but fire changes things in your life, in my life. Fire changes things in a community. Fire is radical. And God needs people on fire in community. On fire in community to transform that community. Why? Well, verse 16. Why? Peter says, because it's written. It's written in Leviticus. I'm not sure if you've spent a lot of time in Leviticus lately. I've been reading it as much as I can and trying to read through it about 1.5 times a year is when I hope to get through the Pentateuch, the first 5 chapters of the Bible, a couple times a year if I can. It's very important material, but it says, because it is written in Leviticus, be holy. You be holy. Because I, God says, I am holy. You see, nice people will make some difference, but holy people will make a huge difference. When we look and we think about hope, we're not looking in the rearview mirror, we're looking ahead. And we're not saying, although we're saying, here's where we've been, God, where are you going? And we want to join you and go there. That's our goal. But if worry, or fear, or jealousy, or its close cousin hate, unforgiveness, sin, weariness, overload, if those things continue to distract you from what it is that God wants of you and what God is doing in you, those distractions can make us live our Christian life in the rearview mirror, constantly looking back, not seeing forward. So hope looks forward. The mirror gives us perspective, gives us an idea of where we've been, gives us experience. But forward is where He is. So what's the mission look like? I called up somebody today and told them I want them to write this on my business card. It's been there for a while. I'd kind of forgotten. But I want this on my business card. It's the Salvation Army's international mission statement. Our mission here at Winterberry Church and in your church, and because you're a part of this place, part of this talk today, is to share the love of Jesus Christ, to work at meeting human needs, and because of that, to transform the community that you have an influence over. Might be this community, might be your neighborhood, might be the people in your house, might be your family members. Share the love of Christ, meet human needs, transform the community you have an influence over. That's our mission, and we'll do it by setting our hope on what is ahead of us, looking in the rearview mirror as needed, eliminating as many distractions as we possibly can. God bless you.